Fanny to McAllen. This is November the 3rd, 1985. And we want to interview you and my dad so that we may have a family history from your side of the family.
Fine.
Would you like to tell us about what you can remember about your mother's early life and your father's early life?
Well, don't know very much about my mother's early life. It was often quite early in life, and she didn't have anybody to be with, but just left alone. So we had a brother that was very wealthy, and they didn't have any children, so they took her in and raised her till she got married.
And where was this at?
In Bauska, Latvia, where we lived, where they both lived.
What year did you come to the United States?
1906.
1906, and you travel by train, boat?
Oh, well, no, we traveled by train from Bauska to Riga.
Yeah, from where now? From where you live?
Bauska was the town that we lived.
Uh-huh. And you could take a train to Riga?
When they took a train from Bauska to Riga. You see, there was Riga, there was Bauska, Mito, and Riga. It was just a straight line to the towns, the three towns, like one after another. And they took the boat there. See, because Riga was a port.
Oh, I see. And you took a boat from there to
We went to England.
England?
From there we came to New York.
Oh, so did you come through Ellis Island?
Oh yeah, we had to come through Ellis Island, but we had passports. We didn't have to steal ourselves across the line,
Yeah.
like a lot of them.
What was it like to see the Statue of Liberty?
Oh, well, at that time, it impressed you, but not what it didn't mean that much to us because we didn't know enough about it.
I see. So, Grandpa says he came into Galveston, that he didn't go to Ellis Island.
Yeah, well, he came the other way, you see. He came
From Germany?
from Texas. He came. He said he did come from Germany. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, that's what he said.
And we came from our part of the country. I came from Bauska.
Yeah.
But he came from Bauska too, but he went a different route. And of course he had to go by train and by boat too. We all had to go by boat who had a passport to England. And from there we were transferred wherever we were going to go. Some went to New York, some went to Philadelphia, some went to Texas. Just different.
Yeah.
They divide them up.
Had Russia taken over your towns yet? Russia.
Well, we were under the Russian king all along.
Under a czar?
Yeah, under the Tsar. Yeah.
Who was that? Do you remember at that time?
Nicholas.
Nicholas?
Mm-hmm.
Were you glad to leave?
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, at the time when we left, my sister and I, Pauline, it was, at that time, the Tsar proclaimed freedom of speech and freedom of press for a short time. There was a lot of students, the youth really, at that time some was revolutionist, some was Zionist, some was Bundist, and they all, they would meet secretly, at night, and they had little pamphlets they would give out and all that, but everything was secretly, because once the government find out, they would kill you, or whatever.
Nobody
So,
can kill you.
in order for him to find out who is who, he proclaimed all this. You see, freedom of press, freedom of speech, and you can just go ahead and have your meetings open, and it was just great. That's what they taught.
Yeah.
But he did that just purposely to find out who's who. And of course, the youth was so enthused, they didn't think that maybe it's just a trap.
Yeah.
So after a very short time, he sent in his, they call it gendarme, those soldiers that ride on horses. You know, they call them gendarme there. Well, they came in and they started arresting the leaders. And sometimes they even made mistakes. They, let's say, like, you are a cousin to me, and I'm the one who is really belong to that socialist movement, where you don't know a thing about it. You was just the same name. They would pick you up not knowing that you are not the one. So they picked up about 5, 6 young men, took them down. We had a river that flowed right through the city. Took them down to the river, lined them up, and those gendarmes just shut them down like dogs.
Not to
And they
interrupt,
Not
to interrupt.
Yeah.
I followed them around and I was right there where they shot him.
You was? You see, I remembered every detail about that too. So you remember it too.
I remember, I was right there.
Yeah.
I walked with him.
And they didn't let them be buried because they said they want the people to see him and see what they are doing. And they let them lie there for several days, didn't they, Adolf?
I don't remember.
Don't you remember that? For several days, they let them lie there on the
I just followed
ground.
them up when they was leading them. They had a list of names and they went from door to door to pick up those people.
Yeah.
And when they got those, I believe 5, 6 of them, they led them up to the river and shot them. And I followed them with a little boy, you know. I went to see what they're going to do with him.
How old were you?
Well, it wasn't so long before. You must have been 14, 15, something like that. And I remember Frau Blankenstein, her son, very big tall fellow, they got him too. And I don't think he was even mixed up in it. And then there was 2 Jewish boys, they had the same name, you know, they're cousins.
Yeah,
One of them,
blacksmiths. Blacksmiths. They
yeah,
both were blacksmiths.
yeah. And
One was here on the block and the other on the other block. They was competitors.
and they thought, you know, they didn't know, they didn't have no idea, they just got one
They
that had
had
the
the
same name.
name and they came to the place and they asked him, what is your name? And he said, and there was a young fella there about the same age, they was cousins, and he was a block away, so they picked him up.
He was a married man, had 2 children. They picked him up and killed him. And the one that was really guilty of being a socialist, he got wind of it right quick and
He wasn't
he ran
even
away.
guilty of it. The way it was 2 blacksmiths, one in each block. And when one of them was making those instruments to meet the people that they were going to fight, making them out of iron picks. And they just came up and they had the name, and they both had, there was cousins, they had the same name, but both blacksmiths a block away apart. So they picked up the wrong one.
And killed him.
When it was a little too late. I know, I followed them around. I was a little late.
So at that time, anybody who had a teenager just packed them up and sent them away. They sent them to relatives.
What did I do with my keys?
It's in your pocket. What year is this we're talking
That
about?
was, must have been 1904 or 1903, wasn't it, Adolf?
I don't remember. I don't have my
Yes,
keys.
you do, Dad.
You'll find it.
That's not the keys.
They're in your pocket.
Well, I guess I've been in my pocket.
There they are. Those are the keys.
From the house? Or
Yes.
the keys from here?
Those are the keys to the house.
Well, no, what, this, no.
Those are the keys to the house.
I know, but I mean, I had another bunch of keys.
You left them in the house.
Why
you
did,
left-
why did I do that?
Let's do this and then you just put them in the house because they,
I say it must have been, I'm not sure, in 1904, something like it, that happened. So, you know, anybody who had a teenager, somebody in school, they would took them out, send them to the United States. When they had somebody, even a friend, they would say, take him in. We'll send enough money for you to keep them up till maybe they get a little work or something. Because when you sent money at that time from Russia, from where we lived, to United States, if you send them $1, they would get only 50 cents. $1 of their Russian money, we would get 50 cents here. So you see, it took a lot of money to send from there here. But mothers and fathers did it in order to get the teenagers out because they didn't know when they might come and make another attack like that.
were they taking only the boys or were they taking boys?
No,
and-
no, girls too. Whoever, if you are my neighbor and you mad with me and you want to get even, a lot of them did, they would say, you know, her daughter is mixed up. Her daughter is a Bundist, or she's a Zionist, or a socialist. And they would just come in and pick you up and send you to Siberia or wherever they feel like it.
When did you come to this country?
In 1906.
And was there any particular reason as to why you came?
Yeah, for that reason.
That's the
My
reason
mother,
you
yeah, wanted to send, Pauline was mixed up. You know, she was a socialist. And she would get, you know, those socialist pamphlets and all kinds of literature, and she would distribute them. Well, they would distribute them, they would say, we're gonna let them know, we're gonna meet so-and-so. And they would just go around and shake hands and give them a pamphlet, you know, to read and whatever. She was a worker for him.
What did
She
that
would-
say I do with my keys?
Daddy, they're in your pocket. The rest of them you left at home. In the other pocket.
You mean I left it at home?
You just took the house keys and left the rest of them at home. Those are your
You
house.
keep them separate.
Okay. Well, okay, what were you saying you were? Continue. Go
Or
ahead.
continue. So you see, when I wasn't mixed up as much because first of all, you see, I was about 17 then, and I wasn't, you know, involved like she was. And but my mother wanted to send me away too. So Pauline and I came to this country. We had a cousin. So at that time, you know, nobody was flourishing, you know. Nobody had much.
They all worked for $6 a week.
Well, we didn't have any profession whatsoever. We didn't know what to do anything hardly. So we went to work at hand work. We were making some kind of a torso. And then there was some embroidery things. We made $3.50 a week. And of course, our cousin wasn't able to keep us. We had to pay her. So it took practically everything that we made to pay her for our board and keep. We had to do it because she didn't have to give it to us. She didn't have enough herself. So it was kind of a hard life. Pauline had her boyfriend, Solomon, already before she left Bauska. So,
There was 2 communists in Russia yet, and they made contact They was handling one another leaflets and communication.
So, and he came over too, because at that time, oh, I tell you, we might know what year it was, because it was the Japanese and the Russian War.
1905.
1905. So we left 1906, which is a year before. Because how come me to know the exact time my husband to be? But of course, you know, at that time I didn't know he was going to be my husband. See, he came here in 1905. He had just gotten out of the army. You see, in Russia, you have to go 4 years in the army. They pay you, I think, 60 cents a month or what, or something like it, to the soldiers. And you have to be almost a slave for 4 solid years. So he had just gotten out of the army. He had served his 4 years. Then he, just as he got out, the Japanese and Russian War broke out. Well, he knew good and well they're going to call him back right away. So for that reason, he made contact and got ready so he could come to the States. See, he wanted to run away, which he did. So he came south, to South Carolina. Pauline and I came in a year later, in 1906. If the war broke out in 1905, so that's what he says. I do not remember exactly. So when Pauline and I came, we stayed in New York with my cousin for about 8 months. Then her husband-to-be left and came to Texas because his family was there already. And he was going to bring Pauline with him, and they would go to Texas and get married in San Antonio, where they were. So when my cousin found out that I am in New York, he made a trip and came down there and proposed to me to marry him. He was 10 years older than I. And of course, you see here, I was a young girl. Pauline was going to leave. She was going to go to Texas. I didn't know what I could do. And it was, so when he asked me to marry him, I just decided that was a good thing for me, you know, in plain language, you know.
Yeah.
So I
Okay,
just took him up, and we
He
came
wouldn't take any
south,
chances.
and we lived there ever since. We lived in a little town in Union, and then we moved to, well, I'll skip the other little towns. We'll move to Whitmire, and we stayed there 46 years. We built a building there, opened up a store. At first, you know, we had very little money. When my husband was peddling, you know, going around to sell merchandise, and I stayed in the store. And
That was a mill town?
Milltown, yeah. And we had farming then too, but that didn't last too long. But we did very well, and everybody seemed to be, of course at first they didn't know what Jews are hardly, you know. But after so long a time, they liked us, and they were very kind to us. And especially me, they took in the banker's wife, Mrs. Lewis. She took a fancy to me, and she would come in the store practically every day, talk to me. You know, she wanted me to teach her the German. And of course, at that time, I spoke German fluently. And of course, find out a lot about the old country. And she would teach me English. And she was very, very kind to me. And in general, you know, kindly, she just taught me so much that I still have it in me.
How many languages do you speak
Well, I spoke at that time, I spoke Lettish very fluently.
that was in your hometown?
Yeah, and German, and also, of course, Jewish. That's all.
Jewish being Yiddish?
Yiddish, yeah.
Yiddish.
Not Hebrew, you see.
Uh-huh.
Yiddish.
How many languages did y'all speak in your hometown?
Well, they spoke some Russian, not much. And that's all, Lettish and German. At that time, they didn't teach much
Yiddish too.
French, but
Yiddish.
Yiddish.
Yiddish, yeah. Oh, yeah, Yiddish we spoke very fluently. We spoke Lettish very fluently. Used to sing the songs and everything, you know, just
Do
like...
you remember any of the songs? Can you sing a little bit of?
Well, I remember one song, it was funny, you know.
Yeah.
Kurtut, you remember Adolf?
Yeah.
Kurtutetsche, Geilete mine. You remember that? Where are you going, my little rooster? See, you can imagine what kind of song it was. But it was, for us, you know, it was great, you know, just...
There wasn't much of a song.
Huh?
There were not much songs.
No. At that time, Lettish was not a language with a grammar. But since then, they put a grammar to it. And now they teach it in schools even. But they didn't then.
Now it belongs to the Latin. At that time it was part of Russia.
When you lived there, was it part of Russia or was it an individual country?
Russia.
No, Russia. All, there, it was an individual country for a short time after the war.
I see.
And they didn't manage right or didn't know how to manage.
They weren't big enough to be a country.
Well, they weren't big enough and they just didn't know how either. And for that reason, they had to go back and they was back on
The longest part of it is less than 100 miles.
When did your mother come over?
Mother came over after World War I.
Did she come alone?
Yeah. No, she came with Pearl. She and Pearl came at the same time.
Your mother?
Yeah. Your mother too. Your mother and Pearl came at the same time. That was after you was here.
I'm
already.
older than Pearl.
I know that. You was here already. When Mother and Pearl came over here, you was here
Yeah, that's right.
doing the war. And then Mother, doing the war, we couldn't, they couldn't come. We didn't even know whether they are alive or dead, you know, because you couldn't correspond, you didn't know anything about them.
So how did they make contact with you after the war?
Well, they made contact with us after the war. In fact, Pauline found out, and she called me. She says I don't know how she got, in San Antonio, it was a big city, and they could find out a lot of things. And she knew that they let her know somehow, some way. And she called me and said, I had a word that they are all alive and well, because my father died during the war.
When did you find out that he had died?
Oh, not until after the war. We didn't know if any of them were alive when this went on. And we couldn't help them, you know, we couldn't give them a thing. You know, they needed help, they needed food, they needed clothing, they needed everything. But there is not a thing that anybody could do who lived in the States to send it to them, all during the war, and they had an awful hard time. They said they would stand in line for a loaf of bread for 24 hours. And of course, one person couldn't do it, so one person would go home, sleep a while, come back and relieve them. You see, you couldn't leave the line. If you do, you're out of it. And they would relieve them, and the other one would go to sleep. And that's the way they would stand in line to get a loaf of bread. And they would get, I think, a quarter of a loaf for a person.
Oh my, after all that length of time.
No food. It had gotten so bad there at one time that they would eat human. they would steal children. That's what our sister Rebecca told us.
And
And
they didn't want to come when your mother did? Rebecca and Luba
Oh.
and Betty?
Well, you see, Rebecca was married, and they had children at that time, you know, and after the war, they reestablished themselves. Before, they didn't want to come. After that, it was hard to come. You see, neither one of us were very wealthy. To bring over families, what can you do with them, you see? You had to support them, and we weren't able to do it. So, and then it wasn't so easy to come over either, so that was the hard trouble.
And when your mother came, she came directly to San Antonio?
Yeah.
She had
No, she came to my place, to South Carolina.
Oh.
She and Pearl both. Pearl left right away and then came to Pauline. And Mother stayed with me for a while, you know, for a couple of years. And then she came to San Antonio. You see, I lived in a small town, and they didn't like small town.
She says she lived in a small town.
So what?
She lived in a place that wasn't a town.
He says the place you lived in wasn't even a town.
Oh, well, at one time, but then we moved to Whitmar, and it was a good, nice little sized town.
How was your trip coming over from Latvia?
For
You
Blapi?
came over on the boat?
Yeah, we
How long
came.
did it take you?
Well, I think it took,
She went to New York at that time.
yeah, you see, it took, I know, about 4 or 5 days to go from Latvia to England. But from England to New York didn't take long. I don't know how long, but anyway, it didn't take, don't remember, it was just about 3 or 4 days. But why that other took so long, they said it was something wrong. That
Which one took long?
it took long from Latvia to England. We had to come to England.
How did you go?
London, huh?
How did you go to England?
By boat.
Boat?
Oh, yeah. Nice boat.
Daddy, you said it took you almost a month to come,
30 days.
30 days.
Is that it? It didn't mean.
I came to
Galveston.
But he came to Texas, you see.
But it would take
See,
that much
from-
longer?
I don't know why.
New York and here, if you come from Europe to New York, it's 6 days.
Mhm.
But to come to Texas, that's once around the world.
Maybe so. I don't know what the reason was, but
Because they stopped in Baltimore and whatever. There's 3, 4 places they stopped.
but you came by boat too, didn't you?
Yeah, no, I didn't fly over.
I mean, you didn't come by train or anything.
Well, how can you come by train?
Well,
here?
from Baltimore you could come by
Oh.
train.
No, I came to Galveston.
Yeah, see, that was Port Town, isn't it?
And the Gulf of Mexico is rough.
How were your accommodations on the ship?
Very
In the
good.
bottom.
Hmm?
He said he came on the bottom.
Mhm. I didn't. It's very nice. And you see so many people, we didn't come, you know, 3rd class. I came 2nd class. So it wasn't bad. Then,
I must have come 6.
well, maybe because he was male, you know, that had something to do with it, because the Russian Tsar didn't want the males to leave the country. You see. And even if he was young, it was still a little hindrance. I came 2nd class, and you know, everybody gets sick. Well, it was, I was with a few other young people, Pauline and I, so we didn't get sick, but a lot of people got sick. And the 1st class was decked with all kinds of foods and beautiful, just like you see here today. That's the way the ship is, you know, when you travel 1st class. Well, we from the 2nd class, the youth, you know, would go in. The table was set, there was a lot of food, and a lot of them couldn't come out to eat because they were sick. So we ate. We had plenty of beautiful food and nice tables, tablecloths and all.
Oh, that was nice.
So we enjoyed it.
What was your first impression when you came to the United States from Russia?
Well, when we came to United States, like I say, where did we come? To a poor cousin who barely made a living, and we right away had to stop to think,
But a job.
what will we do, where will we find, how will we eat, and how will we sleep? And in order, this was our goal, we had to have that, and we didn't see how we can accomplish it. So we really didn't have, I can't even remember that I thought that I was in a different country. That wasn't on my mind even, on our mind.
Was it like you expected it to be, or?
Well, we didn't think. If we would have thought for one moment, it would have been like it was. Pauline was always sickly, and my mother would cater to her, wait on her hand and foot, get for her the best sardines, the best of every kind of food that you can find. Pauline got it. The other children didn't, but Pauline got it. So when Pauline came over, a quetch, sickly, she had headaches. Well, she was sick. She couldn't do anything. I was the one, the aggressive one. I don't know whether I should tell all that or not. You see, we worked at handwork. We made $3.50 a week. Well, both of us couldn't, and
What'd you
Pauline
do with
couldn't
your
work.
money?
Huh?
When I came, you didn't have any money. What'd you do with all your money?
Oh, that's right. So she couldn't work. But she would work a half a day, she would come home sick. In the back. I was aggressive, so I went to look to see if I can find something else to do. And at that time here, things were bad too. In the United States. It was something, but I don't know what it was, but the tariff or something at that time. I don't remember. I wouldn't have known what it was, but it was something about the tariff, and it was kind of what you might call a depression at that time. So the finer dressmakers didn't have good jobs, couldn't get good jobs. This was a factory where they were making children clothes by the dozen, So I went up there and I got a job. And there was ladies would come up to work over there at the children's dresses, but they were real dressmakers, you see. But they would work a half a day and they would get disgusted. You see, it wasn't their work. And they would drop it and leave, because they had to get paid by the dozen. If they didn't finish it, they had to leave it without any pay. So a lot of them would leave it, those that were real dressmakers, and they just said, oh, no use for them to work at it, they wouldn't make anything. So the forelady liked me, what they call the forelady there from the shop.
The foreman.
Yeah, the forelady was a forelady. So it was a basket with the clothes a lot of times, half done, but they would leave it. So she would always I went up there and I got a job. And she would always give me, if she had a basket half done, she would give it to me. When I finished it, I got paid for the whole thing, you see. So I made 1 week, I made close to $13. And I went into one of my other cousins, Gonne, gedenkst Gonne? Ik ben met Rebecca. You know Rebecca, don't you? Anyway, so I told her that I made close to $13 that week. And Lord, that was gold. See, it was enough to feed Pauline and me for I don't know how long. So, and Pauline would stay home, stay in the place a lot of times, and just do a little cooking, whatever she could for she and I. And sometimes her boyfriend would come up too to get a plate of soup. Well, at that time when you went into the yeah, well, I want to tell you this. So when I told her I made $13 that week, she says, "How did you make it?" She didn't want to believe me. So I went, so I went upstairs and got my ticket, you know, your paycheck ticket. And I wasn't too lazy to do that. And wrote it down and showed it to her. I say, "You see how I made it? Here is my paycheck, my pay ticket." And Pauline, when she stayed home, and she couldn't go to work, she would get some bones, you know, at the butcher shop. You would buy a piece of meat, and you would get a piece of liver for nothing. You would get bones for nothing, and a heart for nothing, and you would make a good soup. So, you know, you could live with a few cents that way, and that's what we did. And we stayed in New York for 8 months. And then Pauline went to Texas, and I went to South Carolina.
So y'all both got married about the same time?
At the same time, yeah. Our children, my son was 6 months younger than Mary. Mary Lifshitz, Pauline's daughter. I remember one thing, you know, they was playing a German, you know, we didn't have shoes. We would walk on, our shoes didn't have soles on them, let's say. And that's true, because we couldn't hardly have them fixed. You know, we didn't have money enough to fix them. But there was playing a play, Das Licht, German play, in New York, and it was $2 a ticket. And you know, we didn't want to miss it, and we went to that show. We paid the $2 a ticket and went without soles on our shoes. And Das Licht was something like a socialist play. That is, they played the play, I remember that much. And she had, Das Licht is a candle.
And the souls wore out already.
Licht is a candle. So, and she had the candle, and when she put the candle in the window, they knew what to do, you know. You see, everything was secretive. So we had to see it, and we paid. We did without shoes, but we had to go to see that play.
Was it
I've
worth
never
it?
forgotten it, huh?
Was it worth it?
Well, for us at that time it was. It wouldn't be worth it today, but for then it was worth it for us. Because it was a German play, and because it was a socialist play. Of course, Pauline wouldn't want to miss it for anything.
Was she active in?
Yeah,
And
and she got to San Antonio, yeah. Her husband was a real communist.
That's how they met.
Yeah. A real communist. And he never made a living for her.
They were married a long time.
Oh, yeah.
Well, did she become a communist?
Oh, yeah.
She was a communist.
Yeah, she was.
She still is, I think.
Yeah, well, she doesn't know what she is now. But
Is she the only member of the family to be a
I
communist?
think so.
no, she's the only one, isn't she?
Yep.
And how about the sisters that stayed in Russia? Were they?
Well, they were educated. Luba was a bookkeeper, and she was very smart, made good money then. See, that's why they didn't care to come over, you know, before the war. They had it pretty good. Rebecca, that just died recently, she was a beautiful girl. She had red auburn hair and beautiful features, and was well educated, and she would go skating, and you know, and just she was she was it. And she married a at first she went to Moscow. The Jews couldn't go to Moscow. You know, they wouldn't let Jews in. So then she was a governess in some very high-ranking officer's home. And
She was a nurse to the children.
not a nurse, she was a governess, teaching
Well,
the
that's
children.
the same thing.
No,
here.
it's not. No.
Here it's a nurse, over there it's a governess.
Over there it's a governor. Well, anyway, you know, a nurse doesn't teach the children, and she was teaching the children. Then, after World War I, she said they could go to Moscow, and she was there, and that's how come them all to land in Moscow. Because of that. Because of her.
And how about Betty? What did she do?
Well, she was with them all. They all went there.
But did she do anything special?
Yeah, she was a bookkeeper, and she was very smart, very smart. It looked like the first batch of children were not as smart, where Pauline was pretty smart. Pauline and I and Adolf, we were not that smart, but the others, after that, Pearl wasn't smart. Our father was a very brainy man. He had a wonderful memory, didn't he? Wonderful memory. And smart, nice, genteel man. Our mother was a go-getter. She was very aggressive. And of course, you know, the dealings, the way my father had the dealings with the meat. I told you how he did the meat, no?
Daddy had mentioned something about it.
You see, he had a standard order to deliver so much meat to Mito, the neighboring town. Well, there was no train going there. So you had to go by horse and wagon to deliver the meat. He had to deliver it twice a week. Twice a week, wasn't it that way, Adolf? I remember it all right, don't I? Okay. I don't want to mislead you all. For the government, for the soldiers. So he had to deliver so much meat twice
The
a
way
week.
to make it simplified,
Mm-hmm.
the Jews only use the front end. They don't use the rear end. Here they do, but over there they don't. It's not kosher. It's got too many veins in the rear end.
Oh, I see.
So,
You don't know that.
The
That's
front
right.
end, the Jews ate, and the rear end they send it to the Gentile. And
The
they
real
say-
end is treif.
Yeah.
You know
So
what treif is.
when he'd buy up the draper part,
He had a
and
standard order for that too.
what do you mean a standard order? There's no such a thing as standard
No.
order. He'd buy up the meat, surplus meat, let's put it like this, and he took it to the big city and sold it sometimes direct to the big butchers, and sometimes when the big butchers was filled up, he'd peddle it off to the little butchers, a piece at a time, a rear end, mostly rear end. The Jews only ate the front end. The rear end has got too many veins. So
The
Jews,
rear end was treif.
the rear end never was used by Jews, never.